beat to it, Joseph Tam.
Who here has had to argue with a child? Anyone? Okay. And for those of you who are not parents, how about your boss? Or if you run a business like me, how about your customers? Chances are, what you may not realize is that all three of these characters have something in common. They're all seemingly unreasonable human beings who just want to be heard and understood. Now for myself, I have a 5-year-old daughter. She's here tonight, River. And I'm ashamed to admit that over the past 5 years, I've struggled at being a father. I've struggled at understanding her and connecting with her. So I went out looking for a solution. Ironically, I found it in a business development book called Verbal Judo by a gentleman by the name of George Thompson. And within this book is a tool that I found particularly useful not only to connect with my daughter, but as well as with my customers and my spouse. And I'd like to share this tool with you tonight. Don't worry, it's pretty easy to remember, and I guarantee you, before you know it, you'll be using it. And I'm sure you're not very surprised to see that it's a 4-letter acronym. LEAP, L-E-A-P, stands for listening, empathizing, asking, and paraphrasing. So you might say, so you have a problem connecting with your daughter. It's simple. Just listen to her. Well, guess what, folks? Listening, it's a lot easier said than done. Good example. River's reading to me. She loves to read. She's reading to me. I'm listening, but I'm off here doing my thing on my computer. I'm sure you're all familiar, those who are parents. I'm listening, but I'm not really listening. I'm only listening with my ears. But, you know, she quizzes me after she reads. And I fail all the time. So what's important is we need to listen with our ears, listen with our eyes, with our minds open. Because only by doing so can we get the pieces of information we need for the next step, which is empathizing. It's at this point where you start building the framework with those pieces of information you've gathered to start understanding how you can put yourself into the other person's shoes. It's important here to understand that empathizing is very different than sympathizing. Empathizing is simply trying to understand why that person is thinking the way they're thinking. You don't necessarily have to agree with what they're saying. Another example from my daughter. She comes home, we're talking about her career prospects. Remember, guys, she's 5. It goes something like this. So, River, what do you want to be when you grow up? A queen. A queen, you mean a princess, right? No, a queen. Why a queen in particular? Well, a queen is the boss of all the princesses. And she gets to make all the decisions in the kingdom. Okay, I see where you're coming from. So, empathizing. I now see where she's coming from. I don't necessarily agree with it. So now that we've built a picture of where the other person's coming from, it's time to fill in the holes in the picture. And to do that, we have to ask questions. We have to ask questions in an open-ended manner so that they feel that you are actually paying attention and you have a genuine desire to understand what they're saying. Asking questions is also another opportunity for the other person to perhaps change their mind without losing any face. So let me ask you, Faye, for example, in your opinion, how has asking questions helped you with your day-to-day communications?
me get information, and then like he said, I would have a chance to influence the other person without them knowing it.
Excellent. So if I understand you correctly, by asking questions, you get a chance to understand the other person's point a little bit better, and you're also able to influence perhaps the way that they're thinking.
That's better, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Faye. So what I've done there is I've asked Faye an open-ended question, trying to gather more information to understand her point of view on the topic. But more importantly, after that, what I did was I paraphrased. I repeated back to her what she said, but I'm not just repeating it verbatim, I'm putting it into my own words. And the importance of this step is to ensure that she and I actually have come to a common understanding of what's going on. It may take several iterations of leap before you come to that point. But the key thing I want you to take away here is that you both have now arrived at a common point from which you can then proceed to the next action. I would like to think that I've improved my relationship with my daughter, but I also know that I'm not always applying this rule. It's very difficult, but when I do remember, it does seem to work. So if you're like me and if you're struggling to connect with either your spouse, your customer, or your kid, take a leap next time and listen, empathize, ask, and paraphrase. Mr. Contest.